From the very beginning of this legal battle, the prosecution had an overwhelming amount of evidence stacked against the accused. The lawyer, a seasoned expert in criminal law, had meticulously gathered every document, witness testimony, and forensic analysis necessary to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that identity theft had been committed. The defense, despite its attempts to challenge the validity of the evidence, struggled to counteract the overwhelming proof presented in court. The digital footprint left behind was undeniable. Bank statements, fraudulent loan applications, and even signed contracts all traced back to the accused. Furthermore, security camera footage, voice recordings, and text messages between the accused and her husband revealed a well-orchestrated plan to assume another person's identity for financial gain. The case was straightforward, and the judge, recognizing the clarity of the evidence, showed little patience for the defense's weak rebuttals. It was a classic example of how digital forensics, financial audits, and strong legal representation could expose even the most carefully planned deception. The lawyer, confident in his ability to prove the crime, wasted no time in presenting every damning piece of evidence, leaving the accused with no viable defense. Identity theft is one of the most serious white-collar crimes in the modern world, affecting millions of victims each year. In this particular case, the crime was especially egregious because it was committed against a family member, someone who had once trusted the accused. The emotional and financial damage inflicted upon the son-in-law was severe. His credit was ruined, his savings were drained, and he was left in a state of distress, not knowing how deep the fraud had gone. In cases of identity theft, victims often spend years trying to recover from the damage inflicted upon them, dealing with banks, credit bureaus, and law enforcement agencies to clear their name. The accused, fully aware of the consequences of her actions, had knowingly engaged in fraudulent activities that would have long-lasting effects on her son-in-law's financial well-being. The court took this into consideration, emphasizing that identity theft is not just a crime against an individual but a betrayal of trust that can devastate lives. Given the severity of the case, the prosecution demanded the maximum sentence allowed by law, ensuring that justice would be served. As the courtroom proceedings unfolded, the tension in the air was palpable. The judge, a no-nonsense figure with years of experience presiding over high-profile criminal cases, listened carefully to both sides before rendering a decision. When it became evident that the defense had no substantial argument to counter the prosecution's evidence, the judge's patience wore thin. Addressing the accused directly, the judge made it clear that identity theft is a grave offense with severe legal consequences. "You did not and do not have the right to steal someone's identity," the judge stated firmly, silencing any further attempts by the defense to justify or minimize the crime. The accused, who had remained defiant throughout most of the trial, finally began to show signs of remorse, or perhaps just fear, upon realizing that a lengthy prison sentence was inevitable. The judge's words carried weight, emphasizing that fraudulent actions have consequences and that the justice system would not tolerate such blatant deception. Every spectator in the courtroom, including journalists covering the case, took note of the powerful message being delivered. Crimes of financial fraud and identity theft would be met with the full force of the law. After hearing all arguments, the judge wasted no time in delivering a verdict that would send a strong message to potential offenders. For the identity theft of your son-in-law, the judge declared, you will be receiving the maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. A hushed silence fell over the courtroom as the weight of those words settled in. The accused husband, who had played a role in the crime, was also facing a severe sentence. The prosecution had argued that both individuals had knowingly engaged in a premeditated scheme to defraud their own family member, showing no regard for the pain and financial hardship they had caused. The sentence was not just about punishment, it was also about deterrence, ensuring that others considering similar crimes would think twice before attempting to manipulate and exploit another person's identity for their own gain. The court recognized that financial crimes often leave invisible scars. Victims struggle for years to regain stability, and their mental and emotional well-being is deeply affected. With that in mind, the judge's ruling was firm, underscoring the fact that trust, once broken, carries severe consequences in the eyes of the law beyond the immediate legal ramifications. This case highlighted the broader issue of identity theft and its impact on society. Every year, thousands of unsuspecting individuals find themselves in financial turmoil due to fraudsters who manipulate personal information for their own benefit. The justice system plays a critical role in ensuring that perpetrators are held accountable and that victims receive the support they need to rebuild their lives. In this particular case, the son-in-law would now have to go through the arduous process of reclaiming his financial identity, proving to banks and credit agencies that he was not responsible for the fraudulent activities committed in his name. Meanwhile, the accused and her husband would serve their time behind bars, a stark reminder of the consequences of their actions. Cases like this serve as a warning to others who might consider engaging in financial crimes. No matter how carefully a scheme is crafted, digital trails and forensic evidence make it nearly impossible to evade justice in the long run. The court's decision was not just about punishing two individuals, but about reinforcing the principle that ethical conduct and financial integrity are essential pillars of a fair and just society. The case quickly became a topic of discussion not only within legal circles but also among the general public. News outlets covered the trial extensively, emphasizing how even close family members could betray one another for financial gain. Legal experts weighed in, noting that while identity theft is a growing issue, the severity of this case set it apart. Many fraud cases involve anonymous hackers or distant criminals who steal personal information through digital means. However, when the perpetrator is someone within the victim's inner circle, someone trusted with access to personal documents and financial records, the crime takes on a much more sinister dimension. Public reaction was mixed. While some were shocked at the audacity of the crime, others saw it as an unfortunate but increasingly common occurrence. Identity theft is no longer just about hacking into bank accounts, it is about exploiting trust, and this case underscored just how vulnerable people can be, even to those they believe have their best interests at heart. While legal proceedings focused on punishing the guilty, the real challenge lay ahead for the victim, who was left to pick up the pieces of his life. Financially, the damage was significant. His credit score had plummeted, he was drowning in debt that wasn't his, and he faced countless hours of paperwork to prove that he was not responsible for the fraudulent transactions made in his name. But beyond the financial ruin was the emotional toll of betrayal. This was not a random act of cybercrime. It was a deeply personal violation committed by someone he had once trusted. The realization that his own in-laws had systematically dismantled his financial stability left him with feelings of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. He struggled with trust issues, finding it difficult to confide in others or believe in the good intentions of those around him. The psychological scars ran deep, and even though justice was served in court, it did little to heal the emotional wounds inflicted by the crime. The betrayal had permanently altered his relationships, leaving him wary of even the closest people in his life. The unraveling of this crime was not immediate. It took the relentless efforts of law enforcement officials and forensic investigators to piece together the full extent of the fraud. When the son-in-law first noticed discrepancies in his bank statements and credit report, he was confused rather than alarmed. At first, he assumed there had been an error, perhaps a clerical mistake by his bank. However, as more unauthorized transactions surfaced and loan applications appeared under his name, he knew something was terribly wrong. When he reported the fraud to the authorities, investigators began tracing the origins of the transactions. Through a combination of digital forensics, financial tracking, and surveillance footage, law enforcement discovered a disturbing truth. The very people he had trusted had been systematically stealing from him. It was not an impulsive crime. It had been planned, executed with precision, and covered up in a way that suggested experience in deception. The police worked closely with financial institutions to freeze fraudulent accounts, but by then, the damage had already been done. However, their diligence ensured that the criminals did not escape justice. While the primary accused was at the center of the identity theft case, her husband was not merely a passive participant. Evidence showed that he had played an active role in facilitating the fraud, using his knowledge of financial systems to help orchestrate the crime. Emails and text messages revealed discussions between the two, strategizing how to bypass certain security measures and withdraw funds without triggering suspicion. Unlike the wife, who had direct access to personal information, the husband contributed by setting up fake business accounts and laundering stolen money through multiple channels. His involvement ensured that the stolen funds were difficult to trace, delaying the discovery of the fraud. However, once investigators connected the dots, both were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and financial manipulation. The husband's role meant that he, too, would face significant prison time, adding another layer of justice to the case. The court made it clear that anyone involved in such crimes, whether directly or indirectly, would be held accountable for their actions. This case set a powerful legal precedent for identity theft crimes, especially those committed within family circles. It served as a warning that fraud, regardless of the relationship between the perpetrator and victim, would be met with the harshest legal consequences. Prosecutors highlighted the importance of public awareness regarding financial security, urging individuals to monitor their accounts regularly and take proactive steps to protect their personal information. The case also shed light on the broader issue of financial fraud and the increasing sophistication of identity theft schemes. As technology advances, so do the methods criminals use to exploit it. making it crucial for law enforcement to stay ahead through advanced digital forensics and cybersecurity measures. Additionally, this case reinforced the necessity of harsher penalties for those who commit financial crimes, ensuring that victims receive justice and that potential offenders think twice before engaging in fraudulent activities. The ruling stood as a testament to the justice system's commitment to holding financial criminals accountable, no matter who they were or how carefully they had planned their crimes. At the heart of this situation is a deeply personal emotional struggle. The speaker is frustrated, possibly even angry, about what has happened, and this anger is making it difficult to decide whether they are being fair or overly harsh. This is a common dilemma when emotions run high. People often find it hard to separate their feelings from the facts of a situation. The speaker openly admits to this internal conflict, wondering if their emotions are clouding their judgment or if they are fully justified in their stance. This transparency is important because it shows a level of self-awareness. Many people in emotionally charged situations refuse to acknowledge their potential biases, but in this case, the speaker is at least questioning whether their response is proportionate to the wrongdoing. The phrase, "I don't know if I'm being too harsh," suggests an inner debate, showing that while the speaker is angry, they are also trying to be rational about the situation. However, the lingering frustration is undeniable. The choice of words like, "I won't help him," indicates a strong emotional reaction that has not yet subsided. Whether or not they are in the right is subjective, but one thing is certain. Their emotions are a significant factor in how they are handling the situation. One of the most interesting aspects of this scenario is the way the speaker turns to the internet for validation or alternative perspectives. By asking others to weigh in, "Let me know in the comments what you think about this," the speaker is inviting a broader discussion, which is a hallmark of modern online culture. In many online spaces, especially forums dedicated to moral dilemmas like Reddit's AITA, "Am I the A-hole?", people turn to strangers for an unbiased perspective on personal conflicts. The internet provides a unique space where people can receive feedback from individuals who are not emotionally invested in the situation. Some users may offer support, affirming the speaker's feelings, while others may challenge their perspective, forcing them to re-evaluate their stance. This kind of engagement serves multiple purposes. It allows the speaker to vent, helps them gauge whether their reaction is reasonable, and generates discussion that keeps the community active. Furthermore, this strategy encourages user participation, keeping audiences invested in both the story and the outcome. By crowdsourcing opinions, the speaker is not just seeking advice but also reinforcing the sense of community that keeps content like this relevant and engaging. The core of the situation is a debate about responsibility, both moral and financial. The speaker is angry, presumably because they feel that someone else has acted irresponsibly, leaving them to deal with the consequences. The specific reference to vet bills suggests that the conflict revolves around an unpaid financial obligation, likely tied to the care of an animal. This adds another layer of ethical complexity because when animals are involved, emotions tend to be heightened. The speaker feels wronged, not just because they were financially burdened, but because they perceive the other party as failing to uphold their responsibility. A commenter suggests a compromise, allowing the person in question to earn back their standing by working off their debt. This is a reasonable middle ground, as it provides a way to balance fairness with accountability. However, the speaker expresses doubt that the individual will accept this arrangement, implying that they suspect laziness, entitlement, or an unwillingness to take responsibility. The moral question at play here is significant. Should people be given second chances if they have failed to meet their obligations, or should they be held strictly accountable for their actions? The answer varies depending on personal values. Some people believe in strict consequences, while others advocate for opportunities to make amends. The situation becomes even more complicated when family involvement is introduced. The speaker mentions that their parents appear to be supportive of the other person, which adds another layer of frustration. When family members take sides in a conflict, it can make a difficult situation even more emotionally charged. The speaker's parents' support of the other person could stem from multiple reasons. Perhaps they see the issue differently, believe in giving second chances, or feel a sense of obligation to help. However, from the speaker's perspective, this support feels misplaced, leading to even greater resentment. This is a common scenario in family disputes, where different individuals hold contrasting views on fairness and responsibility. The suggestion that, if your parents are feeling so supportive, they can pay the vet bills, highlights the speaker's frustration. If their parents truly believe the other person deserves another chance, then they should bear the financial burden instead of expecting the speaker to do so. This is a logical argument, but it also underscores the emotional exhaustion that comes with feeling unsupported by one's own family. The divide between the speaker and their parents suggests an ongoing tension that extends beyond just this specific issue, hinting at deeper familial disagreements over values, responsibility, and fairness. While the primary focus of this situation is a personal conflict, it's also clear that the speaker is using the story as a way to engage their audience and promote their content. By directing viewers to their podcast, Patreon, and YouTube membership options, the speaker is capitalizing on the engagement generated by this debate. This is a common strategy used by content creators, particularly those who share personal stories or controversial topics to spark discussions. The structure of the post follows a recognizable pattern, presenting a personal dilemma, inviting audience participation, and then providing a call to action for further engagement. This approach is highly effective in online spaces where community interaction is key to sustaining viewership. People who feel invested in the story may be more likely to follow the creator on other platforms, seeking more content and exclusive insights. Additionally, monetization through Patreon and YouTube memberships suggests that the speaker has built a substantial audience willing to financially support their work. This highlights the growing trend of independent content creators leveraging storytelling and audience interaction to create sustainable revenue streams. While the personal conflict remains the main subject, it also serves as a strategic tool to deepen audience connection and encourage ongoing engagement. One of the deeper elements at play in this situation is the speaker's lingering anger and unwillingness to forgive. Holding on to resentment is a natural human response, especially when someone feels they have been taken advantage of or treated unfairly. However, prolonged anger can become a burden, not just for the person being resented but for the person holding the grudge. The speaker's statement, "I won't help him, I'm still mad about the whole thing," indicates that their emotions are still in control of their decision-making. This raises the question, at what point does justified anger turn into a refusal to move forward? Some would argue that standing firm is necessary to prevent enabling bad behavior, while others might suggest that forgiving, though not necessarily forgetting, allows for emotional peace. The longer one holds on to resentment, the more power it has over their thoughts and actions. The key question here is whether the speaker is punishing the other person for their irresponsibility or if they are, in some ways, punishing themselves by refusing to let go of their frustration. This highlights a common internal battle between the need for justice and the desire for personal peace. This situation also reflects a broader cultural shift in how people seek moral validation. In the past, personal conflicts were resolved within small social circles, friends, family, or community members. However, the rise of internet forums and social media has created an environment where people present their personal issues to a global audience, inviting strangers to judge the rightness or wrongness of their actions. The phrasing, "Do you think OP is the a-hole or not?" mirrors the structure of online spaces like Reddit's r/AMI where users vote and comment on moral dilemmas. This public approach to conflict resolution has both benefits and drawbacks. On one hand, it allows people to receive diverse perspectives, potentially helping them see their situation more objectively. On the other hand, it can reinforce echo chambers where people only seek opinions that align with their feelings. Additionally, moral judgments from strangers may not always take into account the full complexity of the situation. While the internet can provide useful feedback, it also encourages a kind of courtroom of public opinion where issues are reduced to simple judgments of right and wrong, often ignoring the emotional and psychological nuances of real-life conflicts. Major theme in this conflict is whether the other person deserves a second chance. The commenter's suggestion, letting them work off their debt before receiving payment again, proposes a compromise between punishment and redemption. This raises an important moral question. Should people always be given a chance to make amends, or are some mistakes too severe to warrant redemption? Second chances can be valuable when they lead to personal growth and accountability, but they can also be problematic if they allow people to repeatedly escape consequences. The speaker's reluctance suggests a belief that the person in question is not truly willing to take responsibility. They suspect that the individual will reject the offer of unpaid work, indicating a deeper issue of character rather than just a one-time mistake. This is a dilemma that applies to many aspects of life. Should we offer people the opportunity to redeem themselves, even when we have reason to doubt their sincerity? Or is it sometimes necessary to cut people off completely to protect ourselves from further harm? The answer is often situational, depending on whether the person has demonstrated real remorse and a willingness to change. One of the most emotionally difficult aspects of this situation is the tension between the speaker and their parents. Conflicts involving family members are often much harder to navigate than disputes with strangers or acquaintances. Family relationships come with expectations of loyalty, support, and understanding, but they also bring complications when people have differing views on responsibility and fairness. The fact that the speaker's parents are siding with the other person adds another layer of emotional pain. When someone already feels wronged, seeing their own family support the person who hurt them can feel like a betrayal. The suggestion that the parents should cover the vet bills if they feel so strongly about helping highlights the speaker's frustration. This is a practical solution, but also a way of challenging their parents' stance. If they truly believe in giving the person another chance, then they should bear the financial burden instead of expecting the speaker to do so. This kind of familial disagreement is common in situations where values clash. Some family members prioritize forgiveness and reconciliation, while others emphasize accountability and consequences. When those views are at odds, it can create lasting divisions, making it difficult to maintain close family bonds. Beyond the personal conflict, there is another layer to the situation: the fact that it is being shared as part of a larger content strategy. The speaker is not just recounting their frustration for personal reflection, they are using it as material for audience engagement. This is a common trend in digital media, where personal stories and conflicts become a form of entertainment. The mention of Patreon, podcast subscriptions, and exclusive content suggests that the speaker has built a brand around storytelling, likely attracting an audience that enjoys discussing ethical dilemmas and real-life drama. This raises an interesting question about authenticity. How much of this situation is raw, unfiltered emotion, and how much is shaped to fit a narrative that will drive engagement? Content creators often balance personal expression with audience appeal, sometimes exaggerating emotions or framing events in a way that maximizes discussion. This is not necessarily dishonest, but it does highlight how personal experiences are increasingly intertwined with digital media and monetization. By turning real-life conflicts into shareable content, individuals can build communities, generate revenue, and spark important conversations. But it also means that their personal struggles become public property, subject to scrutiny and debate from people who may not fully understand the context.